I may have said earlier, I'm after the new 70-300 by Fuji. Oh yes, I'm going to flog this and get that. Hi, this is Fuji's 55-200mm telephoto zoom lens, which I've had for about 2.5 years now, I guess. But in a previous video I put out regarding this lens and reviewing it, I mentioned, did I mention it? Did I mention the 70-300 that Fuji announced several months ago? You may or may not know that Fuji have now brought out a 70-300. But Fuji have just brought out a 70-300. So that's equivalent to like 105-450, and that's what I really want. Well, I've been waiting for the 70-300 for months and months and months, and it's been driving me nuts. However, I'm after Fuji's 70-300. It's taken a long time to reach UK shores. But guess what? Now it's here! Yes! At last, I've got it. And what do I think of it? Fantastic! Yes, it is. Now it has 5.5 stop stabilisation too built in, and it's weatherproof. But the stats on this now are coming up here. The lens is relatively compact and lightweight for a zoom of this focal length. Image stabilisation is great, which, like the 1680, is permanently on, unless mounted on a tripod or firm base. It has, as we'll see later, good macro capabilities too. I don't think it needs the anti-lens creep block though, as mine's not crept yet. Now, this is going to be a pixel peaking free zone, okay? So I'm not going to be looking at edge-to-edge sharpness because there's much more to photography than edge-to-edge sharpness. Okay, let's look at some of my images whilst I rabbit on, rather than looking at my mug. Lens reviews are important, of course, as no one wants to shell out a load of dosh for an optic that's not up to scratch. But this is, as I've stated, a non-pixel peeping zone, simply because I believe that most Fujinon lenses are excellent, and that photography and the technique used is of more importance than edge-to-edge sharpness considerations. We all know that photography is an art form, a means of self-expression for capturing moments in time, creating and documented life, events and the world around us. When I captured these images, taken incidentally on a variety of cameras and lenses, optical edge-to-edge sharpness was the last thing on my mind. For me, content and creativity is everything. But of course, I'm not going to use the bottom of a jam jar as my go-to lens, although, oh well, I guess I'm as much a gear geek as any photographer, but just wanted to get my message across that content is everything, whatever lens you use. With their great reputation for quality optics, Fuji have produced a winner with the 70-300. Autofocus is fast and quiet too. So let's see the autofocus in action. Using single point focus, you can see how speedy the AF is, but like most systems, some subjects will still be confused, especially these out of focus pink flowers. It tries hard and it's a tough test, but gets there in the end. But this is all with single point focus. These slender grasses are a tough test too, but it does nail it quite well. I'm so stuck on using single point focus that I continuously forget to use other modes. It's a hark back to the old days, I guess. Yeah. In low light, it will be a lot slower, although this was shot in video mode, and speed of activation is as much down to my settings on the X-T3 as it is the lens. It struggles again when trying to make sense of a mass of pink blobs, but tweaking the green square, which I could have made a lot smaller, or I could have tried zone focusing or wide tracking. In fact I did, and as you'll see, wide tracking works far better. But it does seem to be slower in video mode, but this is again I think down to my settings actually on the X-T3. So speed and the acquiring of focus depends a lot on focusing modes too. The 70-300 is also only one of 4 Fuji lenses that can take teleconverters, so maybe the 1.4 will be on my future shopping list. Maybe. Now this varifocal lens is not designed for zooming whilst videoing. You'll need a parfocal cine lens for that, and Fuji have a couple, from around £3,000 to £3,500. Yeah. I'll take 2, thanks. I know this lens is really sharp, just as sharp as the 55-200, if not have an edge on it. Some reviewers said it's slightly sharper. I mean, wow, you got a pixel peak to find that out, but I've never been disappointed with the 55-200, and looking at the results I've already got out of this lens, the 70-300, it's fantastic, it really is. You couldn't ask for more. Do you know this weighs exactly the same as the 55-200? Okay, it's an inch or so longer, but you know, size, length isn't everything, is it? Guys, anyway, There we are, 70-300, 55-200. Now as you will see, there's not much in it at all. Certainly not weight, because it weighs exactly the same. Did I mention that? I don't know. Anyway, yep. And it still has that fairly stiff zoom, to stop zoom creep. But in addition, on the 70-300, it has a lock, so you can lock it into position if you want to stop it from creeping. But I've not found that to be an issue. I bought it for only one reason, really, for its telephoto, extended telephoto range, because now it's the equivalent to 450mm. To be technically accurate, it's 457mm. Lovely, beautiful lens. Here's the difference between 200mm and 300mm telephoto. Not huge, but it does help in pulling that wildlife in that I'm shooting these days. A 1.4 teleconverter would give me a 600mm focal length, but at the expense of losing the stop to f8, so maybe not. Who knows? Without the hood, yeah, so it fits in the bag beautifully. I did mention in my previous video that I would have loved the 100-400, but I'm not professional anymore. I've become an amateur wildlife photographer in the last year or so, I guess, since lockdown, really. I've been sort of forced, well, can't go out, can't travel much, so walk down my lane and just film the local birds, feathered ones. And yeah, I got some great results with the 55-200, but I was always not able to get in close enough. You won't believe until you turn off OIS, just a difference it made. I did show a clip where I shot a bit of video without the OIS on, handheld, and then with it on. The difference is remarkable. It's like a real shake fest with it off, of course. So that's a real benefit. I mean, thanks to technology now. I mean, this has got 5.5 stops of image stabilisation, so yeah, fantastic. I've only been out once, well, twice actually. I went out early morning to a disused canal to photograph some bird life, and boy did it perform well. I was also fortunate that there was a heron not far away. Also some moorhen chicks came up fairly close to me on the towpath, and I was able to get some great shots using the flip out monitor on the X-T3, getting the camera down to ground level, their level basically, and wow, well, you'll see the photographs because they're coming up and the footage now. Moorhens photographed and filmed with the monitor flipped out at ground level, as mentioned earlier. Focal length on these shots somewhere between 200 and 300mm, and all at f5.6 aperture. The stills are mostly unprocessed JPEGs straight from the camera, shot in austere profile. In fact, although I always shoot RAW, I often capture JPEGs too, and wow, JPEGs straight out of these Fuji cameras are just superb. All video clips filmed in 4K at 50 frames per second, which is my standard setting on the X-T3. A faster frame rate allows more flexibility to enable slow motion. A 300mm close-up as sheep and lambs are in a field adjacent to the canal. As I'm crouched down, a pair of magpies gradually hop closer. Focus is set on single point, but continuous autofocus, and sometimes hunt slightly. No fault of the lens though. I love filming herons, and now with the 70-300 I can get 50% closer in too. With the lens at 300mm I get a shot with a minnow in its beak. The still zoomed in courtesy of Kenny Burns in Final Cut. Every clip you've seen was handheld, showing the effectiveness of the 70-300's image stabilisation. Okay, we'll leave the coot to its breakfast. Let's see how close it can focus. Well, it can't be considered a macro lens, but does focus in quite close. Here's images shot at the 300 end at f5.6, ISO 1600 and all handheld. And these are all Astia soft JPEGs straight out of the camera and unmanipulated. The bokeh's really nice too and not distracting, although bokeh does depend on your backgrounds and the lighting and spectral highlights, etc. Yep, we have one of those pathetic fountains too. So at £729 UK, great value for money I think for a high quality zoom like this. A couple of days ago we were watching the footy, England versus Germany on TV. Wow! My camera and the 70-300 lens were on a coffee table next to me. My wife said, "Look, there's a woodpecker on the feeders outside." A great spotted woodpecker was intently pecking at the nuts. So, with one eye on the match and the other on the woodpecker, I grabbed the camera and filmed. Yes, through double glazing, sadly. Well, nothing like shooting video of a great spotted woodpecker pecking on the nuts whilst listening to the England-Germany match. Fortunately, I'm not deaf in one ear and blind in the other. And yes, that's the match on the audio.
On the charge. Wasn't the right pass.
Well, as you know, we beat Germany 2-0. Yahoo! We set this shot up once it was over. A fab result for England. And the 70-300 is a fab lens. So I hope you enjoyed the review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!